Hey everybody, it's Meredith Miller from Inner Integration. Today I want to talk about upleveling your thoughts after narcissistic abuse. So what happens in life? Well, basically your level of thinking got you to where you are right now. So if you're not happy with where you are, with the way your life is going, the way you feel about yourself, about life in general, you need to change your thoughts in order to change your life. Now, it's okay to change your mind. What happens is sometimes when we want to change our thoughts, our beliefs, our mind, that ends up threatening the status quo around us, either in our family, in our society, in our social group in general, and people can get uncomfortable. And I encourage you to be okay with that, to understand that it is okay for you to change your mind, and it's okay for other people to feel threatened about that. That's more about them than about you. So why is this so important to change your thinking after narcissistic abuse? Well, you could have been in just one relationship, maybe you were in several, maybe this is a lifetime pattern for you, like for most of us. Maybe you grew up in a household where these patterns were taught. In other words, you were taught how to think. You were taught to think in certain ways that were detrimental to you. But at the time when you learned how to think like that, it was a matter of survival. You had to learn to think like that in order to survive. So I'm going to talk about some key areas where you want to pay attention to your thinking, things that you learned growing up. So one of the first ones is you probably learned to care way too much about what other people think. So what happens when we care a lot about what other people think? We end up living our lives for other people. So then we're no longer living our life. You know that part where you realized at some point after narcissistic abuse that you kind of lost your sense of self? Right? All that time you were appeasing and pleasing other people. Maybe you spent a whole lifetime doing that. And now it's time to stop thinking so much about what other people think. Give yourself permission. Approve of your own thoughts, your own choices, and allow yourself to live for you, to think about you first. Another area that you really want to look at is the negativity paradigm that you were taught, particularly if you grew up in a narcissistically abusive household. You were taught to see the world in a way that it's not possible. You can't do it. You're not good enough. Oh, that would never happen. These sorts of negativity things that keep you locked in this negativity circle and stops you from living your life, stops you from manifesting the life that you want, stops you from believing that you can, that you are worthy, that it's possible, and that you can do it. Another area of your thinking that you want to look at is the confusion in the brain fog. So what happens is this creates like a lot of unclear thinking. You know, we can't really think clearly when we're just getting out of one of these relationships, or like maybe we spent a whole lifetime feeling like we were just always in this fog, this cloud, like we just couldn't really think clearly, right? Because of all the abuse, because of the back and the forth and the back and the forth and all the things going on and the cognitive dissonance. So if you find yourself in that whole confusion, brain fog thing, I highly recommend that you face some truth, right? Because what brings clarity is facing truth, like really allowing yourself, being honest with yourself and your life situation where you are right now. What do you want? Who are you? Start asking clarifying questions like this. Things that put the power back in your hands to define you, to define your life. And this starts with your thinking. It starts with your thinking, that clarity. Another area is the racing mind, right? So like your mind just like goes and goes and goes, and you might even be on like permanent anxiety. And what happens is you end up exhausted, because so much is going on in there, right? And then like even afterwards, you know, you get out of the relationship and your mind is like replaying everything. Could I have done better? Could I have done something else? Well, what if I had done this? Would I have been able to fix it? Would this have worked? Well, maybe, just maybe the person, you know, and all of this like racing stuff. So you want to bring yourself back to center with the breath and calm down and ask yourself, does that line of thinking lead you to anywhere good? Does that line of thinking lead you to where you want to go in life? If the answer is no, I encourage you to let that go with your breath. Let it go. Another area of thinking that you really want to look into after narcissistic abuse, and again, particularly if you've grown up in it, is the fear paralysis. So what happened was there was all this fear propaganda, particularly if you had a psychopath parent, or, even just one of those narcissists who was just incredibly, incredibly focused on fear. Could even have been a borderline parent. So trapped in their own fear. They couldn't deal with it. They projected it onto their kids. You can't do that. This bad thing could happen. This really, really bad thing could happen. If you go out and you drive in the snow, and if you go do this, and if you go do that, and like all this fear propaganda. And so what happens is you end up feeling stuck. You end up feeling paralyzed in that fear. And it's hard then to get in contact with the courage in your heart, right? Because the fear is all in your mind. It's in the body, but it's really in the mind. It's all that thinking, that analysis paralysis that leads you to get caught in those fears and get stuck. And so in order to be able to tap into the courage in your heart, you need to ease yourself into the fears, right? And I'm not talking about phobias. Phobia is something else. A phobia is an irrational fear of something, like you're terrified of spiders or something like that, right? That's an irrational fear. That's something else. We're going to leave aside the phobias, but I'm talking about the fears that were programmed into you, like just fear to take a step forward. You manifesting problems with your feet, or probably you're feeling like you're afraid to step forward in life, right? So notice what side it's on. Is it on the left side? That's the feminine side. Is it on the right side? That's the masculine side. But you really want to get in touch with that courage in your heart to overcome the fears. It's going to get you out of your head, focus on the courage in your heart, and ease in little by little on those fears. Like maybe after dating a psychopath, a narcissist, a sociopath, you are terrified of dating. Like, yeah, you learn that fear from past experience, right? It's not a phobia, it's a fear. You learn that fear from past experience because it was really scary being with that abusive person, and you're terrified of attracting another person like that, of getting caught in the same kind of thing. So maybe you take a period of time off to heal yourself, and you kind of ease back into dating. Maybe you go on one date and see how that goes. Maybe you have a social fear now, like an anxiety being around other people in general. So maybe you want to just little by little, go to one little event. Maybe the event's like 1 hour, maybe it's 2 hours. Maybe you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to show up for 1 hour. I have 1 hour to be there, to be present, to breathe, to be present with these people and connect with them in a conversation. And if I don't feel good after an hour, or if I just decide like that's enough for me right now, I'm tired, I'm going to go after an hour. And you just kind of ease your way back in. Maybe you're terrified of being alone. Maybe you're terrified of other people thinking that you're alone. So maybe you can ease back in by taking yourself out to dinner alone. Maybe you go out to a bar alone. So little by little, easing into those fears, leaning into that discomfort, facing that fear with your courage, with the courage of your heart. Albert Einstein said, you cannot resolve problems with the same level of thinking that got you there. And I think that's totally true. We need to shift our perspective. We need to shift our thinking to transform our lives. When we just grind away and grind away and grind away at that problem, like we just don't get anywhere. We have to like step away, do something else, and then suddenly this like lightning bolt appears to us, and then we have a new way of thinking. We have a new thought, a new perspective about something. So here's the challenge that I have for you to uplevel your way of thinking. Ask yourself, who do you want to be? Okay, maybe you're not happy with who you are right now. You've lost your sense of self. You don't even know who you are, right? Ask yourself, who do you want to be? Name some of those qualities. Who do you want to be? And then ask yourself, how would that person think? So, for example, maybe you're frustrated, feeling unsuccessful in your life, maybe unsuccessful at relationships, maybe life in general, maybe at work, maybe in a particular area of your life. So you want to be more successful. So ask yourself, how would a successful person at whatever that is think? right? A successful person isn't going to think, oh, I can't do that. I'm not good enough for that. That's not possible for me, right? So if that's your level of thinking, then you need to realize that if you want to be successful, you have to up-level your way of thinking so that you think like a successful person. How does a successful person think? I know I can do it. I did it. I'm doing it. I'm capable. That's possible. Anything is possible if I set myself to it and I work consistently day after day at it, right? These are the kinds of thoughts that a successful person would have. So take that inventory for yourself. Ask yourself those questions so that you can then reverse engineer the thinking that you need to have in order to get yourself there. Your thinking will change your life. It's not the only thing. It's one thing, and it's one really important thing. How you think about yourself, how you think about the world, how you think about what's possible. So up-level your level of thinking today to live a different life. I'm sending you a big hug.